The night was supposed to save us. Our 10th anniversary, rosemary lamb, slow roasting in the oven, burgundy, breathing on the counter, candles flickering against the rain-streaked windows of our Lakewind home. I had spent the whole afternoon preparing the kind of dinner that used to melt the tension between us. I even wore the navy silk dress Liam once said made me look untouchable. For one fragile, hopeful moment, I let myself believe we could start over. Then he walked in, not with flowers, not with a smile, but with a thick white envelope in his hand, and eyes pinned not on me, but on the inheritance documents lying beside the wine glasses. "I want a divorce," he said. The words slid out of him like he'd rehearsed them for weeks. No hesitation, no tremor. He placed the envelope on the table, sat down, and didn't spare the dinner a single glance. He just stared at the bold black heading on the paperwork beside me. Hart Legacy Trust. Asset Summary. In that instant, I understood something cold and devastating. He hadn't chosen tonight because he loved me. He had chosen tonight because my father's fortune had finally cleared probate. He thought he'd trapped me. He didn't know the lawyers were mine. He didn't know the plan was mine. He didn't know he'd already lost. And all I had to do was watch his greed destroy him. I kept my hands steady as he pushed the envelope toward me, though my heartbeat hammered against my throat. The candles flickered between us, casting long shadows across the table, shadows that made the space between us feel wider than the whole damn room. "Are you serious?" I asked. "We've grown apart," he said flatly. "No point dragging this out. Let's split everything 50-50. Washington is a community property state. It's fair." Fair. He used that word like it wasn't a blade. I looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it. Liam didn't notice. His eyes were glued to the inheritance summary beside my plate, the one showing the $4.1 million my father left me through the Hart Legacy Trust. Stocks, real estate, maritime bonds, antique collections, a life's work written in numbers and ink. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at what he thought would soon be his. Before I could speak, his phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer it, voice hushed, but not enough. I caught fragments, told her weekend, don't worry. When he returned, he acted as if nothing happened. My phone buzzed next. A message from Tessa Monroe, my best friend of 15 years. "He finally told you? I'm relieved. Call me." The blood drained from my face. Tessa knew. Maybe she knew before I did. I stared at the message, then at the man sitting across from me, with the confidence of someone who believes the world owes him a soft landing. For a moment, I felt the crumble grief shock the sting of betrayal, but it didn't last, because something else rose beneath it, something sharper, something steadier, the part of me trained to read balance sheets and hidden losses, the part of me that had rebuilt corporations from ashes, the part my father always said saw the truth beneath the numbers. My husband had chosen the wrong night, the wrong battlefield, and the wrong woman. He thought filing divorce 2 months after my father died was perfect timing. He didn't realize I could see patterns clearer than love. He didn't realize timing was everything. And he didn't realize that by choosing tonight, our anniversary, he had just handed me the first puzzle piece of his downfall. I lifted my glass, tasted the wine, and met his eyes. "All right, Liam," I said softly. "Let's talk about fair." The rain felt heavier that night, the kind that blurred the city lights and made every street look like a warning. I wasn't planning to follow him. I wasn't planning to follow anyone. But when Liam grabbed his coat and left, without a backward glance, something inside me clicked, cold, precise, inevitable. I slipped on my boots, grabbed my keys, and walked out moments after him, letting instinct lead me more than anger. My instincts had never failed me in a forensic audit, and they weren't failing now. He drove north toward the waterfront, not home, not work, somewhere he didn't think I'd ever go. The neon glow of downtown faded behind us as he turned into the high-rise district. When his car finally pulled into the private garage of the Aurora Vista penthouse, a place I knew very well because my best friend practically lived there, my pulse went still. Tessa Monroe's building. The woman texting me, I'm relieved. The woman who should have been on my side. I parked down the block, heart steady, breath steady, mind razor sharp. I wasn't here as a wife anymore. I wasn't here as a friend. I was here as what I truly was, a forensic hunter, tracking the trail of a lie all the way to its rotten core. And I was ready for whatever I found behind her glass doors. The elevator hummed up the outside of the building, its glass walls offering the perfect vantage point. From the sidewalk, I could already see the glow of Tessa's living room, soft gold, lighting the kind she loved for her Instagram shoots. I knew her habits, her rhythms, her flawlessly staged world. I just didn't know she'd staged me too. I crossed the street, keeping to the darker edges of the walkway. The rain had eased, leaving a sheen on the concrete that mirrored the sky. When I reached the lobby, I didn't enter. I veered left toward the courtyard garden, where the giant floor-to-ceiling windows of her unit provided a clear view inside. What I saw shouldn't have surprised me, but it still punched the air out of my lungs. Liam's coat draped carelessly over Tessa's cream sofa. 2 glasses of champagne on her marble counter. Tessa, in a burnt orange satin robe, laughing at something on Liam's phone. And Liam, my husband, leaning back, relaxed, comfortable. Like this was his real home, not the one he'd shared with me. I took out my phone, steady hands, despite the tremor running through my chest. I hit record. Inside, Tessa lifted her glass. To our new future, she said, playful and triumphant. Liam clinked his glass with hers. To finally being free. And to her father's money saving our asses. They drank. I kept recording. The next part was quieter, but the garden's acoustics carried just enough. We'll get her to sign by the weekend, Liam murmured. Once she does the marital asset split automatically. She's too emotional to fight back. And once we get our 50-50, Tessa said, we start fresh. No more bankruptcy. No more debt collectors. No more loan sharks. Loan sharks. The word hit me like a stab of cold water, electrifying and dangerous. This wasn't just infidelity. It was strategy. It was premeditated financial manipulation. And they were counting on me being weak enough to make it work. I zoomed in, capturing their faces, the champagne, the closeness, the whole damning tableau. Evidence neat and clean, just the way I liked it. A gust of wind rattled the bamboo behind me, and I froze. But they were too wrapped in their delusion to notice anything beyond their little bubble of greed. I stepped back slowly, letting the shadows swallow me. My heart no longer felt shattered. It felt sharpened, honed to an edge I hadn't touched in years. They thought they were planning my downfall. They didn't know I'd already started planning theirs. When I reached my car, I wiped the rain from my face and whispered the promise, forming like steel inside me. Let's play your game, Liam. You just don't know I'm the one writing the rules. The silence of Liam's office felt different that night. Thick, stale, and strangely expectant, like the room itself knew secrets were about to be dragged into the light. Our house in Lakewind had never been truly quiet, not in a decade of marriage, but this silence, this was deliberate, a held breath, a warning, the kind of quiet that lives at the center of a lie. I stood at his locked office door with the spare key He thought I didn't know about my hands trembling, not from fear, but from clarity. If Liam was bold enough to demand a divorce the same week my $4.1 million inheritance cleared, he was bold enough to hide something. Men like him always left a trail. Numbers, accounts, debts, patterns, and forensic auditors, like me, were trained to follow trails straight into the rot. I turned the key and stepped inside. The room smelled of old whiskey and printer ink. Papers were stacked too neatly. Nothing about Liam was ever neat. His chaos was predictable, messy, loud. This was curated, organized, sanitized, and that alone was proof of guilt. I clicked on the desk lamp and lowered myself into his leather chair. The computer was locked, but the real treasures of dishonest men were never digital. They were physical. Hard copies, folded statements, crumpled receipts, hidden envelopes. I pulled open the top drawer and found nothing unusual. The second drawer held a few manuals, a broken stapler, and an empty cigar box. The third drawer was locked. That was all I needed. I slid a thin steel tool, one I kept from an old forensic training module, into the gap and popped it open with a soft crack. Inside lay a black notebook and a stack of envelopes bound together with aging rubber. My stomach tightened. I lifted the notebook first. It wasn't a journal. It was an account log. Liam's handwriting slashed across the pages, dates, amounts, transfers, scribbled notes like due Friday, and cover later. The numbers didn't lie. He owed money, a lot of it. I sifted through the envelopes next. The first was a credit card statement showing a balance of $12,983 minimum payment past due. The next one, $18,440 across 3 cards. Then another, and another. By the time I spread them across the desk, the total crossed $40,000. My breath grew shallow. He hadn't spent that money on us. The next envelope was heavier. When I pulled the letter out, the heading punched me in the chest. Cole Recovery Group. Final warning. Adrian Cole, a loan shark, whose clients rarely walked away without losing something vital. The letter demanded repayment of $60,000 before escalation. My hands froze on the paper. Liam wasn't just drowning. He'd built himself an anchor and tied it proudly around his own throat. I kept digging. The next folder held printed screenshots of online gambling accounts. BetMGM, DraftKings, offshore poker sites. Transaction pages showed losses of $500, $900, $2,700. Week after week, month after month, another $70,000 gone. But what gutted me wasn't the money. It was a wire transfer receipt dated 14 months ago from our joint account. $6,200. Recipient, Tessa Monroe, Creative, LLC. Memo Consulting. Consulting. My best friend didn't consult on anything except how to siphon the life out of a marriage. I leaned back, staring at the mountain of his secrets. Gambling, losses, credit, debt, loan, shark, threats, quiet. Transfers to Tessa, a financial corpse he'd been burying for years while smiling at our dinner table. And the timing. Every debt grew heavier right before he asked for a divorce. He didn't want a fresh start. He wanted my father's money to cover the hole he'd dug. And he thought I would never find this. I pulled everything into a neat stack, snapped photos, and saved them into a new folder on my phone. A single title, Project Ruin. Liam had chosen war. He just didn't know I wrote the rules. The morning after the anniversary collapse felt colder than any Seattle rain. Not because of the weather, but because I woke with a certainty settling into my bones. Liam's betrayal wasn't emotional. It was financial. Men like him didn't make sudden decisions. They calculated. And if I wanted to uncover the truth, I had to go to the one place he never allowed me to enter, his home office. The room he always kept locked for work reasons, though he never produced any actual work. My instincts, my forensic instincts, were louder than heartbreak. Trust documents don't lie. Bank accounts don't lie. Timelines don't lie. But husbands lie with a straight face, steady hands, and the confidence of someone who thinks he will never be caught. So I brewed coffee, tied my hair back, and walked toward the mahogany door he thought would keep his secret safe. If Liam had gambled our marriage, our money, or my father's legacy, I would find it. Because numbers always tell the story, even when people won't. And by the time I turned the key, hidden behind the bookshelf, I was no longer a grieving wife. I was an auditor preparing to open a corpse. I closed the office door behind me and inhaled a faint mix of stale cologne dust and the metallic tang of old electronics. Liam always acted like this room contained sacred knowledge, but all I saw at first glance were messy stacks of unopened mail, coffee rings, and receipts shoved under a monitor. But on the far wall, his locked filing cabinet waited. That was where the truth lived. I knelt in front of it, slid a thin metal pick into the keyhole, and felt the pins shift. Years of opening sealed corporate drawers for audits had trained my hands for moments like this. The lock surrendered with a click. Inside the neatly organized folders were a different language, one Liam must have thought I'd never learn. Except this was my dialect, my terrain. The first folder, Rhodes Consulting Expenses, a business he had insisted was about to take off. Instead, I found a stack of credit card statements, $40,000 in debt, Vegas online betting platforms, luxury restaurants, all paid from a joint marital card. The next, sportsbook transactions, DraftKings, BetMGM, $70,000 in gambling losses. My stomach tightened. The third, a handwritten note wrapped in a rubber band. A name on top, Adrian Cole. The amount, $65,000 due in cash. Below it, 1 month grace period, no extensions. A loan shark. Liam had borrowed from a loan shark. My hands grew colder as I sifted deeper. More transfers, more lies. And then, the folder that confirmed the betrayal, Tessa didn't bother to hide. Tessa Monroe, Creative LLC, consulting payments, 26 payments, 3 years, totaling almost $36,000, all labeled as brand strategy. But Tessa was a stylist, not a consultant. The math was unmistakable. I opened my laptop, created a new project folder, and named it the only title that felt right, Rhodes Insolvency Report. Line by line, I input the numbers: credit card debt, gambling losses, shark loan, wire transfers to Tessa, marital account withdrawals, joint liabilities. The spreadsheet total climbed until the figure stopped my breath. $206,000 in liabilities tied to Liam alone, and he wanted half my inheritance. I leaned back, staring at the sum, my pulse steadying into something calm and lethal. He had buried our marriage in debt long before he served divorce papers. He'd simply waited for my father to die before cashing out. The door creaked as I stood and scanned the room again, letting the weight of the evidence settle over me like armor. If he thought he was walking away with millions, he didn't understand what numbers could do in the right hands. He didn't understand that by opening this drawer, I had opened his grave. The morning after the anniversary disaster, Seattle felt colder than usual, an iron gray sky pressing low against the city rain, misting the streets like the world itself was holding its breath. I sat in my car outside the brick building on Pinecrest Avenue, the one with the frosted glass doors and gold lettering that read, "Hail Investigations." If someone had told me a week ago I'd be hiring a private investigator to track my husband and my best friend, I would have laughed. Now it felt inevitable, like this was always the road Liam had been steering us toward. My fingers hovered over the steering wheel. Steady, deliberate, not trembling anymore. Something innate in me had hardened overnight. The version of me Liam counted on, the soft wife, the forgiving one, the one who let him manage the finances, even though I was a forensic accountant, had died at that dinner table. Today, I wanted answers. Answers he would never voluntarily give. If Liam thought the divorce paperwork was the beginning of my collapse, he'd never met the side of me that built insolvency reports out of corporate ruins and uncovered embezzlements buried under months of false data. He'd never met the woman my father trusted with the Hart Maritime audits when I was only 27. He would meet her now, and when he did, there would be no going back. Marcus Hale's office smelled faintly of black coffee and cedar polish. The blinds were half drawn, filtering in stripes of muted daylight that stretched across the floor like prison bars. He stood when I entered, mid-40s tall, crisp, white shirt, rolled up at the sleeves, the kind of presence that filled a room without announcing itself. "Mrs. Hart," he said, "you sounded urgent on the phone." "Call me Evelyn," I replied, taking a seat. And yes, urgent is one word for it. He studied me with a level, unreadable gaze. "You said your husband may be having an affair." "He is." The words came easier now. "With my best friend. And I have reason to believe he's hiding financial activities from me." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "What kind of financial activities?" "The kind that ruin lives," I said. "Gambling debts, maybe funneling money through shell accounts. I need confirmation, documentation, dates, footage, every thread that connects him and her." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the scope. "And you want all this because of the divorce?" "No," I said, "because of the truth. And because Washington is a community property state. If he's been draining marital assets behind my back, I need proof." He didn't flinch at the legal terminology good. "Do you suspect he's using your inheritance?" "I suspect he's been planning to." I slid across the table a printed message, Tessa's text from the night before, and she knew about the divorce before I did. Marcus's eyes sharpened. "That's bold." "That's stupid," I corrected. "And stupidity leaves footprints." He gave a faint smile. "Fortunately, footprints are my specialty." I handed him a slim folder, screenshots of bank statements I'd quietly taken that morning, a few timestamps from nights Liam claimed to be working late, and a photo of his car parked outside Tessa's penthouse 3 weeks ago when he swore he was visiting his brother. Marcus flipped through it all with the focus of a surgeon. "This is enough to start. I'll need access to any joint accounts." I slid over a USB drive, already downloaded, statements, transfers, credit card summaries, and a secondary folder labeled Unusual Activity. He raised an eyebrow. "You did all this today?" "I'm a forensic auditor," I said simply. "Patterns speak to me." Marcus tapped the folder. "Give me 48 hours. 24, I countered. "They're accelerating something." He filed for divorce at the exact moment my inheritance cleared. Tessa is involved. I need to know what they're rushing toward. He exhaled slowly. "All right, 24. I stood, smoothing this edge of my coat. Just as I reached the door, Marcus spoke again. "Evelyn." "Yes." "You're preparing for a war most people break under." "I'm not most people," I said. "And I didn't start this. But I will finish it." Outside, rain slicked the pavement, turning the street into a sheet of silver. I walked toward my car with purpose, the city buzzing quietly around me. Hiring Marcus wasn't just a reaction, it was strategy. Every empire falls from within, and I fully intended to expose the rot that had been growing in my marriage long before last night. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Tell Marcus Hale to back off Evelyn. Some things you don't want to find. My pulse spiked, but not with fear, with confirmation. They were already scrambling. Good. I slid into my car, rain tapping softly against the windshield. They wanted a war. They were about to learn. I'd been raised by a man who taught me exactly how to win one. The morning after I discovered the truth, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and felt an unfamiliar quiet settle inside me. Not grief, not shock, not even anger. Something colder, sharper, like the clean click of a lock sliding into place. The kind of calm that only comes when you finally stop begging the storm to spare you and decide to become the lightning instead. Liam thought filing for divorce would break me. He thought I'd stumble, cry, cling, bargain. He thought I'd step into the courtroom unprepared and blind, letting him carve half my inheritance out of me, like meat off a bone. He thought he was the hunter. But I had spent my entire career uncovering lies buried in financial statements that billionaires swore were untouchable. I had broken corporations down to dust with nothing but a spreadsheet and a pen. Compared to that, dismantling a greedy husband and his equally greedy mistress felt almost too easy. So I tied my hair back, slipped into my black blazer, and picked up my phone. If Liam wanted a war, he'd get one. But it would be on my terms, on my battlefield, and with weapons he didn't even know existed. And the first step was simple: gather every piece of ammunition he'd ever carelessly left behind. I began with his office downstairs, Liam's sacred territory. He used to say I wasn't allowed in there because he needed creative space, but I knew better now. Creative space was code for whatever he didn't want me to see. The door wasn't even locked, which almost insulted me. If you were going to build a secret life, at least pretend to work for it. The moment I stepped inside, the smell of cologne and old whiskey hit me. Papers were stacked everywhere in what looked like chaos. But I'd learned long ago that Liam's messes always hid patterns if you knew where to look. I powered on. His computer slipped the small external drive from my pocket into the USB port and let it silently clone the hard drive while I started scanning the room. The first drawer of his desk held nothing unusual: pens, receipts, a scratched watch he swore he'd fix one day. The second drawer told a different story. A locked metal box sat wedged beneath files labeled business expenses. I pulled a bobby pin from my hair, bent it, and worked the lock until it clicked. Inside were credit card statements. Dozens. The balances were impossible to ignore. $14, $982, $22, $410, $35, $900. All maxed out, all hidden from me. Next to them were printouts of gambling transactions. DraftKings, BetMGM offshore poker sites. Nearly $70,000 gone in the past 12 months. My pulse didn't spike. Instead, my mind started categorizing the data, mapping connections, noting dates. A forensic accountant's instinct isn't emotional, it's mathematical. Under the stack was a crumpled piece of paper, torn at the edges. A handwritten note: Liam, $60K due by end of month. No extensions, AC. Adrian Cole, a known loan shark in Seattle. I had testified in a case involving one of his victims 3 years ago. If Liam owed him money, the situation was worse than I imagined. The hard drive finished copying with a soft chime. I slipped it into my pocket and moved to the bookshelf. Behind his row of whiskey bottles was a thin manila folder. Inside, I found wire transfer receipts, monthly payments sent to Tessa Monroe Creative LLC. My best friend had been receiving anywhere between $2,000 and $6,500 from Liam for nearly 3 years. Consulting, he'd written in the memo line. Consulting, right. The final blow came when I found the printed packet from Lakeview Heights Estates brochures for luxury properties overlooking Puget Sound. The dates on the brochures matched the hidden wire transfers. He wasn't planning to divorce me and rebuild his life from scratch. He was planning to move into a waterfront home with her. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Helena Brooke, my father's attorney. Evelyn, I reviewed the Hart Legacy Trust last night. We need to meet. Today. Perfect timing. My father had left me the tools. Liam had left me the evidence. And now, Helena would give me the map. I stacked everything into neat piles and photographed each one. Credit card statements, check. Gambling losses, check. Loan shark note, check. Wire transfers to his mistress, check. Asset research for a home with her, check. By the time I walked out of Liam's office, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to turn his secrets into weapons. Ready to take everything he thought he could steal. Ready to show him what happens when a man undervalues a woman who sees numbers like arteries and lies like fractures in bone. Liam wasn't prepared for the truth, but I was, and I intended to use every piece of it. The conference room smelled like polished wood, expensive toner, and overconfidence. I could feel Liam's swagger before I even heard his footsteps, an arrogant, rhythmic tap, echoing down the hallway of Brooke and Dawson Law. He didn't come alone. I saw the reflection of Tessa's white blazer in the glass wall before the door even opened. She dressed like a victorious bride walking into the signing of my divorce as if it were her coronation. Her heels clicked like applause. They thought this was their stage. They thought they were here to claim their half of a $4.1 million inheritance. They thought they had cornered me, the fragile wife, the grieving daughter, the woman who should be on her knees begging to save her marriage. But as they stepped into the room, they didn't notice the quiet power humming beneath the surface. They didn't notice the way attorney Helena Brooke tapped her pen 3 times our signal that everything was in place. They didn't notice the stack of sealed exhibit folders arranged with surgical precision. They didn't notice that the woman sitting at the head of the table, hair pinned in a sharp twist, black suit, crisp as a blade, was no longer theirs to manipulate. They walked in expecting an easy victory. They had no idea they were walking into an execution. Liam sat across from me, leaning back, like a man ready to collect a prize he believed he'd already won. "Let's get this over with," he said, tossing a glance at his lawyer, a smug, heavy-set man named Dalton Pierce. Tessa took the seat beside him without asking, crossing her legs like she owned the room. Her perfume reached me before her voice did, sweet and sharp, exactly like the woman she'd become. Helena passed me a discreet nod before folding her hands. "Shall we begin?" she said, her tone polite, but edged with steel. Pierce slid a stack of documents forward, as if delivering a royal decree. "Our proposal is straightforward," he said. "A clean 50-50 split. Washington is a community property state. My client merely wants what he is legally entitled to." Legally entitled? I almost laughed. Helena didn't blink. "We'll review your proposal after you've seen ours," she said calmly. Pierce smirked. "There's no need." Helena opened the first folder. The sound of paper sliding across the table sliced through the room like a knife. Liam frowned. "What's this?" "An itemized breakdown," Helena said, "of marital debts, liabilities, and financial misconduct accumulated by Mr. Rhodes over the past 3 years. Pierce stiffened. We weren't informed of. You will be, she said smoothly. As we moved through each exhibit, Tessa uncrossed her legs. I watched their confidence shift. Just a flicker at first. A twitch in Liam's jaw. A wrinkle between Tessa's brows. A pulse in Pierce's neck. We'll address Exhibit A shortly. Helena continued stacking more folders. But before we begin, we need verbal confirmation from Mr. Rhodes. Liam leaned forward. Confirmation of what? Helena's gaze didn't waver. Of the relationship between you and Ms. Monroe. Silence struck the room like a hammer. Tessa inhaled sharply. This isn't relevant. It is, Helena said, because we are establishing marital fault. Liam barked a laugh. Fault, Evelyn, don't be pathetic. Everyone falls out of love. Then state it clearly, Helena replied. He rolled his eyes. Fine. Yes, Tessa and I are together. The words hung in the air, poisonous and perfect. Helena marked something on her notes. Excellent. Then we can proceed. Tessa's face paled. Liam frowned suddenly, unsure. Pierce muttered. What exactly does this mean? I finally spoke. The beginning of fair, I said softly. Helena opened another envelope. Before we continue, Mr. Pierce, note that your client's admission places us within the purview of the fidelity clause in the Hart Legacy Trust. Liam shifted. Fidelity? What? I met his gaze without blinking. The clause that disqualifies an adulterous spouse from claiming any portion of the trust. Tessa's hand froze midair. Pierce's eyes widened. Helena's smile was gentle and lethal. And that, Mr. Rhodes, is just the start. Liam looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time, not as the wife he thought he controlled, but as something far more dangerous. A woman who finally stopped pretending. Shall we move on to Exhibit A? Helena asked, and the room fell silent, waiting for the execution to begin. The silence in the conference room felt alive, thick humming, waiting. Liam thought it was the air conditioning. Tessa believed it was nerves. Only I knew what it really was, the moment before a trap snaps shut. The moment a predator blinks too confident to notice the cliff ahead. I watched Liam adjust his collar like a man preparing to accept a promotion, not a sentencing. Tessa sat beside him, legs crossed, lips glossy, and curled into a smirk that reeked of victory. They thought today was the day they'd take half of my inheritance. They thought I would fold. They thought they had the upper hand. They didn't know I had spent the last 2 weeks dissecting their crimes, their debts, their lies, every hidden transaction, every late-night rendezvous, every wire transfer labeled consulting. They didn't know the woman sitting across from them wasn't just their victim. She was their forensic accountant, and she had come prepared to bury them under their own numbers. So when Helena entered with the rolling cart stacked with poster boards, thick sheets veiled under black fabric, my pulse didn't rise. But Liam's eyes sharpened, and Tessa's smirk twitched. They didn't recognize the smell of their own financial corpse. Not yet. Helena closed the door behind her, calm, in the way only a seasoned attorney could be. She took her seat at my right, opened her leather folio, and simply nodded. It was my cue. I stood, walked to the head of the table, and placed one hand on the first draped board. Let's begin with Exhibit A, I said. Liam leaned back, arms crossed. Evelyn, is this really necessary? My attorney already explained. Yes, I cut in. This is necessary. I pulled the fabric down. The first board glowed under the fluorescent lighting, the Rhodes Insolvency Report. A neat column of debts stood center stage numbers I had personally audited and triple verified. Credit card max, USA, $40, 822. DraftKings losses, $18,400. Bet MGM losses, $32,600. Offshore poker sites, $11,120. Cash advance, loans, $14,000. Adrian Cole, loan shark, $60,000. Total $176. $942. Liam's smirk died first. Tessa's followed. What is this? Liam asked, his voice cracking in the middle like a boy caught stealing lunch money. Your financial reality, I replied. Every account you tried to hide, every gambling site you thought wouldn't show on consolidated statements, every cash advance you took when the credit cards maxed out. His attorney cleared his throat. Mr. Rhodes, perhaps you should— I don't need your advice, Liam snapped. He did. He just didn't know it. I lifted the second drape. Exhibit B, wire, transfers to Tessa Monroe. Creative LLC 3 years worth. Monthly. Consistent. Increasing. Each labeled consulting, brand strategy, image development, and the largest one, just 6 weeks before my father died, $12,000. Special project. The room reacted like I detonated a grenade. Tessa's face drained to chalk. This is taken out of context. Helena arched an eyebrow. Feel free to provide one. Tessa opened her mouth, closed. It opened it again, like a fish gasping on a dock. Liam needed advice on marketing. Marketing, I echoed. Interesting, because every time he sent you money, his business filings showed declining revenue, not growth. I let that sink in before I dropped the next bomb. I turned the final board around. Exhibit C, pregnancy and fertility center receipts. The Redwood Reproductive Institute logo glimmered at the top of the board, framed by 3 printed appointments with Liam's and Tessa's signatures. Liam shot up from his chair. Evelyn, that is private. Correct, I said. Private. And somehow funded with joint marital assets. Tessa's voice cracked. This isn't she's twisting. You used my money for IVF treatments, I said calmly, because you planned a future without me, long before he admitted the affair. The room froze solid. Only Helena remained serene, uncapping her pen to take notes, like this was a routine Wednesday meeting. Liam tried to recover. Fine. I made mistakes. But this doesn't change the divorce terms. Yes, I said gently, it does. I tapped the corner of Exhibit B. Because every dollar you funneled to Tessa, every gambling loss you hid, every reproductive expense paid from joint accounts, they all count as marital dissipation. Tessa swallowed. Meaning what? Meaning Helena answered that in a community property state, when one spouse recklessly wastes marital assets, the other spouse is owed reimbursement. I leaned forward, palms on the table, meaning he doesn't get half of anything today. Liam stared at the sea of numbers. You planned this. Of course I planned this, I whispered. You set the fire. I just documented the smoke. He crumpled back into his chair, eyes darting between his lawyer and Tessa, searching for someone, anyone to save him from the very evidence he created. But no one spoke. No one could. Exhibit A lay before him like a gravestone, and the only name carved into it was his. The silence in the conference room felt alive, thick, humming, waiting. Liam thought it was the air conditioning. Tessa believed it was nerves. Only I knew what it really was the moment before a trap snaps shut. The moment a predator blinks too confident to notice the cliff ahead. I watched Liam adjust his collar like a man preparing to accept a promotion, not a sentencing. Tessa sat beside him, legs crossed, lips glossy, and curled into a smirk that reeked of victory. They thought today was the day they'd take half of my inheritance. They thought I would fold. They thought they had the upper hand. They didn't know I had spent the last 2 weeks dissecting their crimes, their debts, their lies, every hidden transaction, every late-night rendezvous, every wire transfer labeled consulting. They didn't know the woman sitting across from them wasn't just their victim. She was their forensic accountant, and she had come prepared to bury them under their own numbers. So when Helena entered with a rolling cart, stacked with poster boards, thick sheets veiled under black fabric, my pulse didn't rise. But Liam's eyes sharpened, and Tessa's smirk twitched. They didn't recognize the smell of their own financial corpse. Not yet. Helena closed the door behind her, calm, in the way only a seasoned attorney could be. She took her seat at my right, opened her leather folio, and simply nodded. It was my cue. I stood, walked to the head of the table, and placed one hand on the first draped board. "Let's begin with Exhibit A," I said. Liam leaned back, arms crossed. "Evelyn, is this really necessary?" My attorney already explained. "Yes," I cut in. "This is necessary." I pulled the fabric down. The first board glowed under the fluorescent lighting. The Rhodes Insolvency Report. A neat column of debts stood center stage numbers I had personally audited and triple verified. Credit card, Max, USA, $40, $822. DraftKings losses, $18,400. Bet MGM losses, $32,600. Offshore poker sites, $11,120. Cash, advance loans, $14,000. Adrian Cole, loan. Loan Shark, $60,000. Total $176, $942. Liam's smirk died first. Tessa's followed. What is this?" Liam asked, his voice cracking in the middle, like a boy caught stealing lunch money. "Your financial reality," I replied. "Every account you tried to hide, every gambling site you thought wouldn't show on consolidated statements, every cash advance you took when the credit cards maxed out." His attorney cleared his throat. "Mr. Rhodes, perhaps you should—" "I don't need your advice," Liam snapped. He did. He just didn't know it. I lifted the second drape. Exhibit B wire. Transfers to Tessa Monroe. Creative LLC 3 years worth. Monthly. Consistent. Increasing. Each labeled consulting. Brand strategy. Image development. And the largest one, just 6 weeks before my father died. $12,000. Special project. The room reacted like I detonated a grenade. Tessa's face drained to chalk. "This is taken out of context." Helena arched an eyebrow. "Feel free to provide one." Tessa opened her mouth, closed. It opened it again, like a fish gasping on a dock. Liam needed advice on marketing. Marketing. I echoed. Interesting, because every time he sent you money, his business filings showed declining revenue, not growth. I let that sink in before I dropped the next bomb. I turned the final board around. Exhibit C, Pregnancy and Fertility Center receipts. The Redwood Reproductive Institute logo glimmered at the top of the board, framed by 3 printed appointments, with Liam's and Tessa's signatures. Liam shot up from his chair. "Evelyn, that is private." "Correct," I said. "Private. And somehow funded with joint marital assets." Tessa's voice cracked. "This isn't she's twisting. You used my money for IVF treatments," I said calmly, "because you planned a future without me long before he admitted the affair." The room froze solid. Only Helena remained serene, uncapping her pen to take notes like this was a routine Wednesday meeting. Liam tried to recover. "Fine. I made mistakes. But this doesn't change the divorce terms." "Yes," I said gently. "It does." I tapped the corner of Exhibit B, because every dollar you funneled to Tessa, every gambling loss you hid, every reproductive expense paid from joint accounts, they all count as marital dissipation. Tessa swallowed. "Meaning what?" "Meaning," Helena answered, "that in a community property state, when one spouse recklessly wastes marital assets, the other spouse is owed reimbursement." I leaned forward, palms on the table. "Meaning he doesn't get half of anything today." Liam stared at the sea of numbers. "You planned this." "Of course I planned this," I whispered. "You set the fire. I just documented the smoke." He crumpled back into his chair, eyes darting between his lawyer and Tessa, searching for someone, anyone to save him from the very evidence he created. But no one spoke. No one could. Exhibit A lay before him like a gravestone, and the only name carved into it was his. Liam walked into the conference room wearing the smug confidence of a man who believed the universe itself bent to his convenience. He straightened his cheap suit jacket, one he'd clearly bought, to look lawyer-ready, and shot me a victorious smirk, as if this meeting were merely a formality, before he collected his imaginary half of my inheritance. Tessa trailed behind him, tense and pale, her eyes darting around the room, like she already sensed the temperature wasn't in their favor. She kept smoothing her white blazer, the one she probably chose to look innocent, pure, blameless. How poetic. At the center of the long walnut table lay the documents waiting for signatures. Liam looked at them with the hunger of a starving man eyeing an untouched feast. "Let's make this quick," he said. "We all know what's fair." Fair. He loved that word. He didn't see Helena Brooke sitting to my left. Posture, elegant expression, unreadable. He didn't notice the embossed folder in front of her marked Hart Legacy Trust, Articles and Conditions. He didn't know he was walking straight into a trap my father built long before Liam ever learned how to spell the word marriage. And he certainly didn't know today was the day every lie he ever told finally caught fire. Liam took his seat across from me, spreading his shoulders like he owned the room. "All right," he said, tapping his pen. "Since Washington is a community property state, we'll start with a 50-50 division of marital assets. That includes the inheritance." Helena didn't look at him. She simply opened the trust folder with a soft, deliberate motion, the kind that made the air thicken. "The Hart Legacy Trust," she began, "is not and has never been part of the marital estate." Liam blinked twice. "That's impossible. Inheritance is community property when—" "In Washington," Helena replied calmly, "inheritance remains separate property unless it was commingled. Your wife never commingled it. She kept it protected under her father's structure." He opened his mouth, ready to argue, but Helena continued before he could gather breath. "Furthermore," she said, sliding a document toward him, "the trust includes specific conditions regarding spousal eligibility, namely Article 9, Section 3, commonly referred to as the fidelity trigger." Tessa stiffened, like someone had poured ice water down her back. Liam glanced sideways at her before forcing a laugh. There was no infidelity. Helena raised a brow. "Would you like to revise that statement?" Liam swallowed. We grew apart. I reached into my bag and set a single photo on the table. Liam and Tessa, kissing. In front of Tessa, Monroe Creative, LLC. Date stamped. Tessa sucked in a breath. Liam went red, then white, then something in between. Helena continued smoothly. "Because the marriage ended, due to your admitted infidelity," she tapped the photo, "you forfeit all rights to the trust's corpus income and any dependent benefits." Liam's jaw clenched. "You can't." "Oh, I can," she replied. "And so can the trust." Tessa's voice cracked. What else does it say?" Helena flipped a page. Article 10, the timing clause. If the spouse files for divorce within 12 months of the grantor's death, the spouse is automatically disqualified from receiving any distribution. Liam froze. He finally understood. He had filed 2 months after my father died, exactly when he thought he'd maximize his chances. Exactly when the trust ensured he'd get nothing. "And there's one more," Helena said, sliding her finger down the text until she reached the bottom. Article 12, the litigation trigger. If the spouse challenges any part of the trust, all assets will be liquidated and donated entirely to Pacific Wildlife Rescue. Tessa's hand flew to her mouth. "All of it, every penny," Helena said, "including the $4.1 million inheritance, the real estate, the maritime holdings, and the antique collections." Liam stared at the words as if they were written in a language he'd never seen. He tried to laugh again, but his voice cracked like thin glass. So if I sue, you get nothing, Helena said. And neither does Evelyn. It all goes to the wildlife charity. His eyes darted to me, searching for some softness, some mercy, some hint that I wouldn't let this happen. But I wasn't the Evelyn who once excused his failures. I wasn't the woman who held our marriage together alone. I was my father's daughter, the daughter who knew every clause before Liam even entered the room. So Helena concluded, folding her hands. If you'd like to walk away with anything at all today, Mr. Rhodes, your only option is to sign the waiver and accept the settlement offered. He laughed again, that same broken, choking laugh. And what settlement is that? I slid the cream-colored envelope across the table. Sign, I said softly, and you'll find out. He opened the envelope with the swagger of a man unwrapping a lottery ticket. His thumb tore through the flap, his grin already forming, as if he could feel the millions he believed were waiting for him inside. Tessa leaned forward, breath-caught eyes glittering with hunger. Even Liam's lawyer, Mr. Crane, lifted his chin with a quiet air of anticipation, like this was the moment his client finally won. I sat perfectly still. Liam slid the paper out. The moment his eyes landed on the number, his smile collapsed. His pupils shrank. His jaw twitched. Then he blinked once, twice slowly, like maybe the universe had printed the wrong reality. It hadn't. What? What is this? His voice cracked on the last word. He tilted the slip of paper toward the light, as if that would magically transform the number. A single line of ink stared back at him, merciless and precise. $20. A final marital settlement for 12 years of marriage. Half of the remaining balance in our joint account, because he had drained everything else behind my back. Liam looked up at me, face colorless. You can't be serious, he whispered. Oh, Liam, I said softly. For once, the math is. His hands shook so violently, the check fluttered onto the table between us. Tessa stared at it like it was radioactive. $20, she hissed. This must be a mistake. It isn't, Helena replied calmly, folding her hands. Upon review, your client's wife discovered that Mr. Rhodes emptied every savings, investment, and marital cash vehicle over the last 18 months. The only untouched account was the joint household checking. It contained $40. As per the 50-50 division, he insisted upon half his $20. That's what he is legally owed. Liam looked like he'd been slapped. This can't be right. I had money. You had debts, I interrupted. Gambling losses, credit card charges, wire transfers to Tessa Monroe, Creative LLC, payments to Adrian Cole, who I believe is still waiting for the $60,000 you owe him. Tessa's head jerked toward him. $60,000. He swallowed hard, unable to form a sentence. And I continued. You had the arrogance to think you could dismantle my life while hiding the wreckage of yours. The conference room suddenly felt smaller, as if the walls themselves leaned in to watch him crumble. Mr. Crane cleared his throat. Your client believed, Helena cut in, that the Hart Legacy Trust was part of the marital estate. He believed he could bully his wife into signing without legal representation. He believed he could time the divorce perfectly to align with her inheritance. And he believed no one would discover the affair. Her voice sharpened. He was wrong on all counts. Liam slammed his palms onto the table. This isn't fair. I met his eyes steadily. Fair. You tried to steal what my father built. You tried to leave me with your debts while you and Tessa played house with my inheritance. You filed for divorce 2 months after my father died. You called me a walking ATM. You drained every cent we had. His voice broke. I didn't drain. You did, I said. And lucky for you, I documented everything. I'm a forensic auditor, Liam. Did you genuinely think I wouldn't notice missing funds, falsified transfers, offshore gambling charges, and manipulated spreadsheets. He looked like he wanted the floor to open and swallow him whole. I leaned in slightly. "You did this," I whispered. "You destroyed yourself." Tessa pushed her chair back abruptly. "I'm done with this. Liam, you didn't tell me about the debts or the loan shark or—" "You said we'd be set," she snapped. "You said we'd have her father's money. You said." "I didn't know about the trust," he shouted, voice cracking. I rose to my feet. "And now you know everything." Helena slid a second envelope toward him. "Mr. Rhodes, your signed waiver of claim on the Hart Legacy Trust is already filed. You have no access to the trust, no portion of the inheritance, and no standing to contest it. If you attempt litigation, the litigation trigger will activate and all trust assets will be liquidated for the Pacific Wildlife Rescue. You will still receive nothing." Liam sagged back in his chair, utterly defeated. I walked around the table, slowly stopping beside him. "Here is your settlement," I said, softly, nudging the $20 check toward him with one finger. 12 years. $20. It's the only math you left me to work with. His voice was a broken whisper. "What am I supposed to do now?" I smiled. A small, quiet smile that tasted like closure. "Live with the consequences," I said. "The ones you created." And for the first time, all night, Liam Rhodes had nothing left to say. Dawn had barely broken over Seattle when my phone lit up with Liam's name again. His 6th call of the morning. 6 calls I had no intention of answering. The man who once strutted into the settlement room like a king now sounded like a drowning man, clawing for driftwood. The voicemail he left at 6:12 a.m. was the rawest version of him I'd ever heard. Panicked, breathing a choked apology, and then a whisper. "Please, Evie, please don't leave me like this." But that was the thing. I hadn't left him. He had pushed himself off the cliff, and I had simply stepped out of the way. As the sun slowly spilled across my kitchen counters, I brewed coffee and listened to his messages like they were background noise. Last night, I watched my husband's confidence shatter. This morning, I was watching the consequences catch up. Loan shark calls, frozen accounts, Tessa abandoning him, his lawyer dropping him, his world collapsing piece by piece. And for the first time in almost a year, I felt something I thought grief had stolen from me forever. Peace. He called again at 7:03. I let it ring while I sliced strawberries for breakfast. My hands moved with a calm I didn't fully recognize. Steady, sure, almost serene. Liam's voice cracked through another voicemail, pleading for just 5 minutes, insisting he'd been manipulated, confused, overwhelmed. He blamed stress, grief, Tessa, the economy, everything except the truth. I wiped my hands on a towel and turned the phone face down. By 8 a.m., a message from Helena arrived instead. "It's done. All filed. You're in the clear. Take the day. You've earned it." Her words settled over me like a blanket, warm, grounding, deeply relieving. My father would have trusted her judgment. I did too. An hour later, I stepped outside, inhaling the crisp scent of pine and the faint sweetness of bakery bread from the corner shop. The sky was clearing sunlight, threading through thin clouds, brightening the quiet streets of Lakewind. The air felt different, lighter, as though the universe finally exhaled with me. A figure stood near my gate, a man in a charcoal jacket, shoulders tense, eyes hollow. Adrian Cole, the loan shark Liam owed $60,000. He wasn't here for me, but he paused when he saw me giving a respectful nod, the kind men offer women they know are untouchable. "Morning, Ms. Hart," he said. "Morning," I replied. "I assume you're aware he's been avoiding me." "I assume you're aware he no longer lives here," I said calmly. He gave a thin smile. "I'll find him. I know you will." We held each other's eyes for a quiet, unspoken second. Then he tipped his chin politely and walked away. Not a threat, not my problem, just a man collecting what he was owed. Back inside, I poured more coffee and sat by the window. My phone buzzed once more, not from Liam, but from an unknown number. Tessa, a single message. You ruined everything. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back, "No, you did," and blocked her. The rain clouds finally vanished, completely, revealing a wide blue sky, stretching over the whole city. I opened the windows, letting the breeze fill the room, letting myself breathe, letting the last fragments of that marriage blow out of my life. When my father died, I thought everything in me had died too. But today, as the light poured across my floor, I realized something remarkable. I hadn't lost myself. I had been rediscovering her all along. And now that I stood free, I wasn't going back. The sun broke over Seattle with the kind of soft gold that made the city look gentler than it ever truly was. I stood at the balcony railing outside my apartment. My apartment, now not ours, watching the light settle over the water as if it were wiping the slate clean. For the first time in months, my chest didn't feel tight. No weight, no dread, just air. Behind me, the last box from the Lakewind house sat by the door. I'd opened it the night before, expecting to find more of Liam's forgotten junk old cufflinks, broken chargers, a stack of magazines he'd never read. Instead, I found my father's letter, the one he left for me with the Hart Legacy Trust. I'd forgotten it existed in the storm of everything that followed. I unfolded the paper, now smoothing the creases with fingers that no longer shook. Evelyn, you are built from two things, your mother's grace and my stubbornness. If someone tries to take what I earned, for you don't fight with anger, fight with intellect. And if they leave you, let them go. Houses don't chase storms. They simply stand, and the storms destroy themselves. I pressed the letter to my chest and let the quiet settle. My father had always known more than he said. A soft vibration against the balcony railing pulled me back. My phone. Another voicemail. Another missed call. Liam again. I didn't need to hit play to know what waited on the other end. The last message had already told me enough. His panic, his rage, his slow realization that he'd traded a marriage and a future for a $20 check and a mountain of debt. His voice had cracked the moment he said, "They're threatening me, Evelyn. Adrian wants his money now. Please, call me." He still used my name like it could save him. I deleted the voicemail without listening. Inside the living room was exactly how I'd rebuilt it. Clean lines, soft light, no trace of Liam's chaos. No empty whiskey bottles, no stack of unopened bills, no lies tucked into drawers I wasn't allowed to open. Just me, my work, my peace. The irony was simple and sharp. He had betrayed me for money he never even got. My father's trust remained untouched because Liam had activated every trigger designed to keep him out. Fidelity trigger, timing trigger, litigation trigger. He'd sprinted headfirst into all three. His greed was so loud it drowned out reason, and I had simply stepped out of the way and let his choices swallow him. He might blame me. He might blame Tessa. He might blame the system, or fate, or the universe. But the truth was quiet and precise. He built his own trap with every selfish decision he made, and I just held up a mirror. I poured myself a cup of Earl Grey, breathing in the lavender steam, and sat at my desk overlooking the water. My laptop blinked awake, screen filling with the outline of something new, something I had been too exhausted to dream about before. A foundation, a program built for women navigating financial abuse, marital manipulation, asset control, and silent forms of betrayal disguised as love. I had been a forensic accountant for corporations my whole life. Maybe it was time to audit something that mattered. I typed the name across the top of the page, the Heart Shelter Initiative. My father would have smiled at that. A message notification popped up, a group of close friends I hadn't seen since before Liam dragged me into the storm. They were planning a dinner next Friday. No pity, no force, just, we miss you. Join if you want. For once I wanted. I closed my laptop, leaned back, and let myself breathe in the new rhythm of my life. The storm was behind me. The wreckage didn't belong to me, and the future finally did. Before heading out for the day, I walked to the balcony again, letting the wind lift the last of the heaviness from my shoulders. He thought he'd broken me, I whispered to the open air, but he only broke himself. Below, the city moved on, as if none of it had happened. And maybe that was the point. Life didn't pause for heartbreak or betrayal. It simply handed you the pieces and waited to see what you'd build next. I smiled, stepped back inside, and left the balcony doors open to let the morning breeze follow me. And if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, thank you. I'd love to know where you're listening from, your city, your country, or even where you are in your own story. Share it in the comments. If you enjoy stories where justice finally catches up to those who deserve it, make sure you subscribe, and stay with me for more. There are many chapters left to tell, and I'd be honored to have you here for all of them.